tunnels. I will show you the fourth one. And this is what I found out, that as we look at the Sphinx today,
for thousands of years, it has sat in absolute silence beneath the Egyptian sun. Its weathered face fixed on the eastern horizon long before the first pharaoh's name was ever written. Carved directly from a single ridge of limestone, the Great Sphinx is unlike anything else on Earth. 73 m long, 20 m tall. A monument so enormous that entire generations have lived and died in its shadow without answering the one question that matters most: who built it? For centuries, the answer seemed settled. The Sphinx was carved around 4,500 years ago for the Pharaoh Khafre, standing as the eternal guardian of his pyramid complex. It became one of archaeology's few unquestioned certainties, but the monument itself has never stopped raising uncomfortable questions. Its weathered body tells a different story than the surrounding pyramids. Its proportions are unlike any other royal monument. Beneath the limestone lie unexplored passages, hidden cavities, and geological features that continue to puzzle researchers. Every new scan reveals another piece of a mystery that refuses to disappear. Now, something unprecedented has entered the investigation. An artificial intelligence was given access to decades of laser scans, geological surveys, satellite imagery, and archaeological measurements collected from the Sphinx. Instead of repeating the accepted explanation, it identified patterns pointing toward a far older and far stranger history. And if those conclusions are even partially correct, the Great Sphinx may be the monument that forces us to rethink where human civilization truly begins. The version we were taught, the standard account, is elegant in its precision. Around 4,500 years ago, during Egypt's 4th dynasty, a pharaoh named Khafre, who ruled approximately from 2558 to 2532 BCE, ordered the construction of the Second Great Pyramid at Giza. His workers took a natural limestone outcrop left from quarrying operations and shaped it into what we now know as the Great Sphinx. The face, according to this account, is Khafre's own. The body is a lion, the symbol of royal power across ancient Egypt. The structure served as a guardian for his tomb complex, half man and half beast, staring down the rising sun for eternity. The evidence offered is contextual. The Sphinx sits within Khafre's architectural complex. A stela erected by Thutmose IV around 1401 BCE, placed between the Sphinx's key paws after the pharaoh claimed the monument appeared to him in a vision, refers to it as the image of the solar deity. Mark Lehner, founder of the Ancient Egypt Research Associates, spent over a decade excavating at Giza and concluded that the geological and archaeological context strongly supported a 4th dynasty date. A few thousand men with copper chisels and wooden mallets. Around 2500 BCE, case settled. But there is a problem with this account. It has been there the entire time, sitting in the stone, refusing to go away. The problem is water. Stone remembers a different story. Look carefully at the body of the Sphinx and the walls of the deep pit carved around it to free it from the bedrock. The limestone is not weathered the way any geologist would predict for a structure that has spent most of its life in a desert. Desert weathering leaves specific signatures. Wind-driven sand scours stone horizontally, producing a pitted, rough texture that is consistent and directional. Salt crystallization causes a different kind of decay, a crumbling, pockmarked surface where crystals grow in the pores of the rock and slowly fracture it from within. What the Sphinx enclosure walls show is neither of these things. They show deep vertical channels, rounded, undulating, flowing downward in waves that soften from top to bottom. This is the signature of sustained rainfall running down a vertical face over a very long period. Not a single flood, not a flash event. The slow, patient work of rain falling season after season for centuries. This observation was first made publicly by French scholar René Schwaller de Lubecq in his 1961 work, later developed into a formal geological argument by researcher John Anthony West. The argument reached the scientific mainstream in 1991 when Robert Schoch, a geologist at Boston University, presented his findings at the annual meeting of the Geological Society of America. Schoch had physically examined the Sphinx enclosure walls and compared the erosion profiles against known weathering signatures. His conclusion: the primary weathering was caused by precipitation. The kind of sustained heavy rainfall the Giza Plateau has not experienced in any meaningful quantity since at least 5000 BCE. Egypt is a desert. It has been a desert for a very long time. The Green Sahara, the period when North Africa supported grasslands, lakes, and river systems, ended its final phase around 3500 BCE, with the heaviest rains tapering off even earlier. Rainfall capable of carving those deep rounded grooves into limestone limestone of that hardness has not fallen on that plateau since well before Khafre was born. If the Sphinx were only 4,500 years old, its body would wear the marks of the climate it actually lived through. It does not. It wears the fingerprint of a wetter world. For that erosion to exist, the Sphinx would have had to be standing when those rains were still falling, pushing its construction back not by centuries, but potentially by thousands of years into a period when, according to everything we have been taught, there were no cities, no kingdoms, no organized labor capable of carving a structure of this scale. For decades, this was the stalemate. Robert Schoch pointing at the watermarks, Mark Lehner and Zahi Hawass pointing at the pharaoh and the archaeological context, neither side able to force the other to move. That is where the stone sat, watched and argued over until someone decided to approach it differently, the machine with empty hands. They stopped asking humans who each carried their preferred answer into the room before they ever looked at the evidence. They handed the problem to Grok, the artificial intelligence developed by Elon Musk's XAI company. The reason was one quality a machine possesses that a lifetime of scholarship cannot replicate. It has no career invested in the answer, no grant to protect, no decades of published work that would require quiet revision if the stone turned out to predate the story. It arrives at the data holding nothing. So they gave it everything. Every erosion survey ever conducted on the Sphinx enclosure, laser scans of the body and trench walls, climate reconstructions of the Eastern Sahara stretching back 40,000 years, incorporating the paleoclimate record from Nile sediment cores and pollen analysis from ancient lake beds, rainfall models, limestone weathering rates under sustained precipitation, seismic readings from beneath the monument, including the ground-penetrating survey conducted by Thomas DeBecke and Robert Schoch in 1992, which detected anomalous subsurface features suggesting cavities in the bedrock. They did not tell it which theory to defend. They gave it the measurements and asked it to report what the measurements said. Grok analyzed the weathering not as an impression but as a geometry. It measured the depth of every groove on the enclosure walls, the curvature of every rounded ridge, the vertical spacing of the undulations. Then it cross-referenced that geometry against the known weathering profiles of every erosive force the plateau could have experienced. Wind-driven sand leaves one signature. Salt crystallization leaves another. Prolonged rainfall leaves a third. Those deep rounded top-to-bottom channels, softer at the top where the water begins its path and deeper lower down where it gains volume. Grok compared the Sphinx enclosure to all three. It returned a confidence figure for rainfall erosion of 94.7%. The wind and sand explanation, the one the official account relies on, came back at a fraction of that. Not impossible, just statistically overwhelmed. But a confidence figure alone is an argument, not a conclusion. So the machine did what the human debate had never fully completed. It asked the follow-up question, how long? How many years of rainfall does it take to cut grooves of that specific depth into limestone of that specific hardness under precipitation rates consistent with the Green Sahara? Weathering rates for stone under known precipitation are measurable, and they have been measured. Grok ran the erosion depth against the rainfall models for the last wet period the Sahara ever knew. The stone had been standing exposed to heavy rainfall for a period measured in many centuries at minimum. And the last time such rainfall fell on the Giza plateau at sufficient intensity ended somewhere around 7,000 years before the pharaoh the textbooks credited was ever born. To carry the erosion actually present in the enclosure walls, the Sphinx would have had to already be standing when those rains were still falling. An engineer who reviewed the analysis framed it this way: the stone was behaving like a witness. It did not know what it was supposed to say. It recorded what happened to it faithfully, one rainy season at a time, and stored that record in the geometry of its own decay. The record it held did not match the story built around it. It matched a much older world. The head that doesn't belong. Most people who stand in front of the Sphinx feel something faintly wrong without being able to name it. The body is enormous, sprawling, the flanks of a great reclining animal occupying an enclosure the size of a city block. And perched at the front is a head that seems too small, out of proportion, as if it belongs to a different statue from a different sculptor's hand. Grok did not accept that explanation without testing it. It measured the volume of the head, the volume of the body, and the ratios any sculptor working from a unified vision would naturally maintain between the two. The numbers disagreed sharply. The head is not slightly small, it is dramatically small. If the original figure had been carved in correct anatomical proportion, the head would need to have been several times larger than the one standing there now, which raises a question that is simple, unsettling, and once heard, impossible to dismiss. What if the head currently on the Sphinx is not the original head? Robert Schoch raised this possibility in his later work, suggesting the human face may have been carved during the Old Kingdom, replacing an earlier animal form, and that its relatively poor preservation reflects not just erosion, but the fact that it was recarved from an already degraded block. The head is a renovation. Schoch found support for this in the weathering itself. The body and the head do not wear the same erosion. The flanks and enclosure walls carry that unmistakable unmistakable rainfall signature, deep vertical rounded channels that running water carves over long wet centuries. The head shows a different profile, sharper, drier. The surface wear of wind and blown sand scouring a form over long arid ages. Two different climates had touched two different parts of the same monument. The only way that happens is if they were shaped at two different times. The body was exposed to the rains. The head was not. The face is an edit made to a monument that was already ancient when the editing happened. When Grok modeled the original volume, the shape it reconstructed was not a human head. The proportions matched a correctly scaled leonine head atop the leonine body, a lion from nose to tail, an animal complete and whole. The age. The lion was watching. Hold that image. Complete lion. Because the machine then did something no human researcher had formally completed. It asked when a lion would have made sense, not artistically but astronomically. The Sphinx faces due east. It stares at the exact point on the horizon where the sun rises on the morning of the spring equinox. This alignment has been confirmed by multiple independent calculations to the arc minute. The sky is not fixed. The stars wheel in a slow grind known as the precession of the equinoxes, a wobble in the Earth's rotational axis that shifts the backdrop of stars against which the sun rises by approximately 1 degree every 72 years. A full precession cycle takes approximately 25,920 years to complete. Each zodiacal constellation occupies the equinox sunrise position for roughly 2,160 years. Grok ran the sky backward. It rewound the heavens over the eastern horizon of Giza equinox after equinox and watched to see when a lion would have been rising in the Sphinx's direct line of sight at the precise moment of dawn. The answer, between approximately 10,500 and 8,000 years before the present, the age of Leo. For that 2,500-year window, the constellation of the lion rose with the equinox sun low and burning on the eastern horizon exactly where the Sphinx has always been looking. Graham Hancock and Robert Bauval had proposed this connection in their 1996 book, The Message of the Sphinx. Grok, working from raw astronomical data, confirmed the basic calculation independently. A lion on the ground staring at a lion in the sky. A monument locked in stone to a specific astronomical window. One that closed thousands of years before the first pharaoh drew breath. The astronomer who reviewed the figure said the alignment was too clean for coincidence. The proportions matched a correctly scaled leonine head atop the leonine body, a lion from nose to tail, an animal complete and whole. The age. The lion was watching. Hold that image. Complete lion. Because the machine then did something no human researcher had formally completed. It asked when a lion would have made sense, not artistically but astronomically. The Sphinx faces due east. It stares at the exact point on the horizon where the sun rises on the morning of the spring equinox. This alignment has been confirmed by multiple independent calculations to the arc minute. The sky is not fixed. The stars wheel in a slow grind known as the precession of the equinoxes, a wobble in the Earth's rotational axis that shifts the backdrop of stars against which the sun rises by approximately 1 degree every 72 years. A full precession cycle takes approximately 25,920 years to complete. Each zodiacal constellation occupies the equinox sunrise position for roughly 2,160 years. Grok ran the sky backward. It rewound the heavens over the eastern horizon of Giza equinox after equinox and watched to see when a lion would have been rising in the Sphinx's direct line of sight at the precise moment of dawn. The answer, between approximately 10,500 and 8,000 years before the present, the age of Leo. For that 2,500-year window, the constellation of the lion rose with the equinox sun low and burning on the eastern horizon exactly where the Sphinx has always been looking. Graham Hancock and Robert Bauval had proposed this connection in their 1996 book, The Message of the Sphinx. Grok, working from raw astronomical data, confirmed the basic calculation independently. A lion on the ground staring at a lion in the sky. A monument locked in stone to a specific astronomical window. One that closed thousands of years before the first pharaoh drew breath. The astronomer who reviewed the figure said the alignment was too clean for coincidence. Built by people who, under the standard account, should not have had the social organization or technological knowledge to construct it. Its builders deliberately buried the site themselves around 8,000 BCE for reasons still not understood. Sacsayhuaman in Peru, where interlocking polygonal stones weighing up to 360 tons were fitted together with joints so precise that no mortar was required and a knife blade cannot be inserted between them. A tolerance that modern engineers have struggled to explain using any technology plausibly attributed to pre-Columbian builders. Stonehenge on the Salisbury Plain, where blue stones were transported from Wales approximately 240 miles away, with solar alignments confirmed by archaeoastronomers. Construction began around 3000 BCE, but site use appears to extend much further back. When Grok measured the angular relationships between these sites, it did not find noise. It found agreement, the same handful of angular proportions repeating site to site, as though every one of these monuments had been positioned against a single underlying reference, a template that no surviving civilization has ever described. An engineer reviewing the analysis said what troubled him most was not any single alignment, but the redundancy. One site pointing at the equinox dawn is a sunrise. Two sites sharing an alignment is a coincidence. A dozen sites scattered across different continents separated by thousands of miles and thousands of years sharing not only the same solar target, but the same internal proportions and the same relationship to specific stellar positions. That is not culture spreading from one place to another. That is a template being followed. And a template implies an original. Someone drew the plan first. The inverted curve. The last thing Grok found was the strangest. When the machine ranked all the sites in the network by the precision of their construction, the flatness of their surfaces, the tightness of their joints, the accuracy of their astronomical alignments, it expected to see the pattern that defines every other story of human skill progress. Rough beginnings refined over generations into mastery. We start primitive and we improve. That is the story we tell about ourselves because for most of recorded history, it appears to be true. The data showed the opposite. The oldest structures in the network are the most precisely built. The oldest joints are the tightest. The oldest alignments are the most accurate. And as the centuries move forward from those earliest monuments, quality degrades. Angles drift. Stones fitted without gap begin to require fill. Alignments that once pointed at the arc minute begin to wander. The knowledge was not accumulating. It was eroding. Each generation of builders inherited a little less of the original understanding. They copied the shape of what came before without fully grasping the mathematics behind it. The form survived the journey forward through time. The precision did not. Grok reported this finding in a single line. The precision curve is inverted. The builders were not learning. They were forgetting. Sit with what that means. The Sphinx and the network of monuments it appears to anchor are not the dawn of something. They are the final echo of something that had already peaked. The last competent work of a knowledge already in decline preserved in stone precisely because stone is what outlasts the people who shaped it. We have spent 2 centuries imagining ourselves as civilization's highest point, looking back with pity at the primitives who stumbled toward what we have now achieved. Grok's map suggests something different. We may not be the summit of anything. We may be the recovery, the scar in the record. There is a date the network keeps returning to. Approximately 12,000 years ago, the geological record carries a boundary that is violent and abrupt. It is called the Younger Dryas, one of the most rapid and severe climate reversals in the last 100,000 years. Temperatures across the northern hemisphere plummeted within decades. In North America, the megafauna that had dominated the landscape for tens of thousands of years collapsed into extinction in a geological instant. A hypothesis proposed in 2007 by researchers including Richard Firestone of Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory suggests this transition was triggered or worsened by a comet or asteroid impact, evidence for which includes a thin layer of nanodiamonds, shocked quartz, and cosmic spherules found at numerous archaeological sites across North America and Europe at precisely this boundary. The Younger Dryas impact hypothesis was formally published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences in 2007, and a 2018 study in the Journal of Geology identified the largest known platinum anomaly ever recorded in an ice core at precisely this same boundary. Platinum being a reliable cosmic impact marker because it is vanishingly rare in Earth's crust, but concentrated in certain classes of asteroid material. Whatever caused it, the Younger Dryas was the kind of event that ends worlds. The kind of break that would leave the people on the other side working from fragments of a memory they could no longer fully reconstruct. The monuments in the network cluster on the far side of that scar, appearing in the record beginning around 10,000 to 9,500 BCE after the ice had let go again. In the 12,000 years between the Younger Dryas and the present, global sea levels rose by approximately 120 m, consuming the coastal margins where the overwhelming majority of human populations have always lived. Whatever physical evidence a pre-Younger Dryas civilization left on those coastlines now sits beneath the modern ocean floor, inaccessible to conventional archaeology. The land-based monuments are, by definition, the survivors built high enough to outlast the flood. As if a people who saw the end of their world approaching did the one thing a dying civilization can do to speak across the catastrophe coming for them. They did not write it in a language. Languages die with the people who speak them. They carved it into stone, into angles, into astronomical alignments that a future civilization could only decode once it had rebuilt enough mathematics to read what was deliberately encoded. A lion watching the dawn of its own astronomical age, a chamber beneath its feet on the equinox line, a grid of markers spanning a planet, each one saying the same thing in the only language that survives everything. We were here. We knew. Warn us of what? That is the one thing Grok could not say. The machine found the message, could not read the meaning. It identified the structure structure of a communication left in stone and sky, and traced the geometry of what was being pointed at, but the content of what was being pointed toward, it left blank. And that blank may be the most unsettling result of all. We built a mind with no agenda, no career to protect, no textbook to defend. We pointed it at the oldest object our civilization knows, and asked it what it saw. It came back not with confirmation that we had the answer right all along. It came back with a floor, a date, a precision curve, a network, an astronomical lock, and the quiet suggestion that something existed before us that understood things we are only now beginning to reconstruct. The Sphinx is still sitting there in the desert. It has been watching the same horizon since before the first pharaoh was born. Never changed. It was never hiding anything. We simply did not have the eyes to read it until we built the eyes ourselves and handed them the stone. So here is what I want to know. If the Sphinx was built to watch the dawn of the age of Leo, and if that lion was a clock running for 10,000 years, what do you think it was counting toward? A memorial for what drowned, or a warning about what hasn't drowned yet? Tell me your honest read in the comments and subscribe, because there are other sites on that network being analyzed right now. Older ones, stranger ones, sitting on the same grid. You want to be here when those results come back. The lion has been staring at the horizon for a very long time. The only thing that has changed is that we have finally turned around to see what it was watching.